I was just 13 when I first played Suikoden II. I didn't fully grasp the politics or the war or why Jowy, my best friend in the whole world, walked away. But I remember how it felt. That ache in my chest, that sense that something that was supposed to be forever had just broken. Permanently. Now, after more than 20 years, I've finally gone back, like running back home. And what I found there wasn't just the game that I remembered. It was better, it was sharper, and it hit harder in ways I never saw coming. Today on Review, we're going all the way in on Suikoden II. From the game's overlooked launch to its troubled translation, its towering villain, and finally to the remaster that brought it all back. And at the end of all that, I'll let y'all know, is Suikoden II still my favorite RPG? No. My favorite game of all time. September 29th, 1999 was a huge day in gaming, especially for little me. A mere 48 hours after my teenage years were officially underway, I had a couple $100 burning a hole in my Carl Canai. I remember begging to be taken to our local mall, and upon leaving the Sears that we frequented for such events, I had two games in hand, two very, very distinct games. One of them was Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. I absolutely love this game. I was jumping cars from over a half pipe, collecting various letters to spell S-K-A-T-E, just utterly entranced by its kinetic energy and perfect soundtrack. But I couldn't help but feel more drawn to the little JRPG I picked up solely off how dope the box art looked and some previews I read in the EGMs and Game Pros of yesteryear. Suikoden II. No 3D graphics, no bombast, just a humble PS1 RPG that would leave a permanent mark on me for decades to come. But let's go all the way back to the beginning. While Suikoden II might have arrived quietly that autumn day, its development story is anything but. Following the surprise success of the original Suikoden, Konami gave the green light for a follow-up. But rather than simply refining the first game's formula, director and writer Yoshitaka Murayama aimed to tell a deeper, more evocative tale. One that would feel less like a traditional fantasy story and more like a political tragedy. The goal was to expand on the scope that the first game delivered, and what we got was over 2 times that game's original size. Murayama's vision was so intricate that he reportedly created an in-house encyclopedia just to keep track of the world's lore, including every political alliance, every historical conflict, and the personal details of all 108 recruitable characters. And despite Murayama-san's legend today, he wasn't working alone, of course. Suikoden II brought back key creatives, including artist Junko Kawano and illustrator Fumi Ishikawa, who together gave life to an enormous cast of uniquely designed individuals, from brooding warlords to dog knights to, this little homie. Why didn't they turn the Mukus into mascots in this world? Anyway, the soundtrack was once again in the hands of Miki Higashino, returning from the first game to compose her final soundtrack ever, and one of the most beloved RPG soundtracks of the 90s. The blend of classical Japanese instrumentation with haunting melodies remains as poignant today as it did back then. But even with all that talent, Suikoden II faced some significant hurdles. Let's start with its biggest one, the localization. Konami's US branch was under a tight schedule and a limited budget. Jeremy Blaustein and his team were only given 6 fucking weeks to do the entire thing. The game had a massive script too, but only so much space for text on the tiny US PlayStation. So they had to compress lines, often to the point of awkward phrasing and deliveries, or just outright mistranslations. According to Casey Lowe, who worked on the English version, the script was so gigantic they had to trim entire portions just to make it fit. That's why some characters speak in bizarre shorthand, say some really off-the-wall-ish, a problem that the remasters wonderfully avoid, but yeah, we'll get there. Then there was the game's release window. When Suikoden II launched, the gaming world was obsessed with 3D graphics. It was a new hotness. You had games that had just come out like Metal Gear Solid, Parasite Eve, and Final Fantasy VII, turning the gaming world on its head. 3D was a new hotness. In that post-FF7 world, Final Fantasy VIII had also dropped, featuring its pre-rendered cutscenes and futuristic style. Compare that to Suikoden II's hand-drawn sprites, bare-bones FMVs, and locked camera. It looked downright old-fashioned in comparison. Internally, there were also creative tensions brewing. Murayama-san's ambitious writing clashed with corporate expectations. Big surprise there. He was pushing for a morally ambiguous story, one where the enemy wasn't always evil and where even your best boy could become your greatest combatant. Now, that wasn't a simple pitch in the mid-90s, and it didn't exactly fit the mold of safe RPG storytelling of the day. But despite all these hurdles and potential sidetracking elements, Suikoden II launched to relative silence. Okay, maybe a little whimper, like a little baby Shiro. I'm sure he was really cute as a little baby cub. Critics who did play it generally liked what they saw. But let's be real, most of the spotlight that year was hogged by the aforementioned Final Fantasy VIII and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, as well as Konami's own all-consuming entity, Silent Hill. Suikoden II, with its sprite-based graphics and fantasy meets anime aesthetic, wasn't exactly setting the industry on fire or helping to move it forward. That's not to say it wasn't good, just that it was sort of easy to overlook in this landscape. And the numbers, unfortunately, reflected that. In North America, it's challenging to determine exact sales figures, but estimates place the number somewhere between 50,000 and 150,000 copies, depending on the source. You can partially blame that on Konami of America, because print run was limited, hella limited. So limited, in fact, that physical copies became ultra collectible, regularly selling for over $300 on the resale market. Now, I had an original copy, obviously, and it got lost in a move decades ago. Probably my single biggest gaming regret of all fucking time. And no, I do not want to talk about it. And I can't blame Blake for this one. But yeah, Suikoden II was severely punished for feeling like it belonged to a bygone era. Review scores at the time reflected that strange middle ground. IGN gave it a 9 out of 10, praising its storytelling and world building. GameSpot was a little more reserved, giving it a 7.6, calling it a solid RPG, but criticizing it for playing it safe from a gameplay perspective. GameFan and Gamers Republic rated it around 80 to 85, generally positive, although they noted that the localization and graphics were underwhelming. Electronic Gaming Monthly gave it a 7 overall, stating that if you've got the time, it's worth the ride.
What the fuck does that even mean?
Of course it's 50 hours, bro. It's a Japanese role-playing game. Though over in the UK, shout out to my mates, Computer and Video Games went all in. They gave it a perfect 5 out of 5, and even said it was better than Final Fantasy VIII. Bold move, despite absolute agreement over here. And don't at me. But even with some mixed praise, Suikoden never found its time to shine until much, much later. Once word of mouth spread and the internet provided RPG fans with a way to connect, people really started to discover that this game was incredible. And more importantly, it discovered what it was saying. That's when it stopped being this hidden gem and ascended to its cult classic status. Today, Suikoden II regularly shows up on greatest RPGs of all time lists, as it should. I guess he who laughs last, laughs best. Unless, of course, you're Luca Blight. Fuck that guy. From this peak, the series would continue to putter on for a few more mainline entries. Suikoden III arrived on the PS2 in 2002, featuring fully upgraded 3D graphics and an ambitious new approach. but it was weird. Weird, but dope. I haven't played 3 in just as long, but I remember loving it. Sales and reviews did outpace what 1 and 2 did, but with Murayama-san's departure, the writing seemed to be on the proverbial wall for the future of the series. I personally haven't consumed any Suikoden games beyond 3, but I know one thing. 4 is quite maligned. With only 4 characters in combat, a weak-ass story, and a naval travel system that wears itself thin, I remember just avoiding it entirely. If 3 was the writing on the wall, Suikoden 4 felt like, I don't know, the Kool-Aid man slamming through said structural supports, spilling sticky red substance everywhere.
Oh yeah!
Poll might have to clean that one up.
Cause I ain't helping.
5 was the last mainline game to drop in the series all the way back in 2006. It was a return to form for sure. My brother swears it's the best in the series, but the one time I tried to play it, it just started off way too slow for me. But if you'd like to see me give it the nostalgia treatment, go ahead and buddy attack that like button, subscribe, comment down below why you think that statement about Suikoden 5 is true or false. After that, we had a few spin-offs, a tactical RPG, and 2 Japanese-only visual novels, and that seemed to be it. The series was laid to rest like that bastard Necklord. No ports, no remakes, very little mainstream fanfare. Just some random forum posts, overpriced, jewel caseless discs on eBay, and a fervorous group of fans that wanted more. Anything. It was a famine out here, y'all. And then, in 2022, Konami finally said 2 words we never thought we'd hear. It's back. The Suikoden 1 and 2
HD Remaster Gate Rune and
Dunning Unification Wars.
I'll always
Feel like that's way too long.
was officially announced. And for the real ones, it felt like the Rune of Beginning was set alight. To Konami's credit, they didn't just dust off a couple of 25-year-old games. They brought back some of the original creative talents as well. Character artists Junko Kawano and Fumi Ishikawa returned to remaster the game's iconic portraits in crisp high definition. Beautifully redrawn backgrounds with subtle motion added to towns, forests, and battlefields. The original pixel art sprites were left largely untouched. A smart move that honored the past instead of overriding it. But they did allow us to run 8 ways now. Take that, EGM. Bug fixes, a dialogue log, fast forward options, auto battle systems, all those modern comforts that don't break the original experience, just smooth it out a bit. Especially for folks like me that have a shit ton of games to play if I hope to ever even reach 10,000 subscribers. But I respect that they left nearly everything intact. Not even Luca Blight's most brutal scenes were softened. The Mad Prince still out here telling grown women to squirm like they're about to become shaved lunch meat.
gripping stuff.
The remasters were launched in March 2025 across PS4, PS5, Xbox, Switch, and PC. And while it didn't set fire to the sales charts, it did its thing. On Metacritic, scores landed in the low 80s across most platforms. 82 on Switch, 81 on PlayStation, 82 on PC. Critics praised the faithful restoration, improved translation, and beautifully remastered visuals. And how did gamers respond? Well, we took to the streets, flooding forums and Reddit with one universal sentiment. Thank God. Steam reviews trended very positive, and on launch weekend, the game spiked to over 8,000 concurrent players. Not bad for a pair of games old enough to rent a car. And just when it seemed like the remaster was potentially it, Konami surprised us yet again. In early 2025, they held a dedicated Suikoden live stream, an honest to Rune full-blown conference celebrating the legacy of this legendary series. They brought out original developers, showed off extended remaster footage, and for the first time in years, talked about Suikoden like it matters. And then came the biggest surprise, Suikoden Star Leap, a brand new mobile RPG set in the Suikoden universe. It promises a fresh cast, an all-new continent, and a story that supposedly bridges the events between Suikoden 5 and the original game. My hope is that it eventually becomes a complete game that ends up on consoles, potentially leading to Suikoden 6? Mobile only is whack, and yes, that briefly gave me a bad case of the people's eyebrow. But for fans like us who've gone decades without anything new, Starleap feels like more than just a little thing to bide your time waiting on the train. With these remasters, the conference, what's to come, Konami seems to be testing the waters, seeing if the audience is still there. Oh, we here. But that's enough background. Let's get into what you came for, the meat of the game, starting with the story. Alert, alert! Spoilers will be all over here, so skip to the next chapter if you're worried about that type of thing and plan on playing Suikoden 2 for yourself. Suikoden 2 opens like some real-life political shit with betrayal. You play as Riou, a budding soldier in the Highland Kingdom's youth brigade, a literal child serving alongside your best friend, Jowy Atreides. The two of you are practically brothers, learning the ropes of military life together. One fateful night, your entire unit is wiped out in an ambush, a staged ambush. Like, this is straight up brutal. Starting a game like this is crazy. Seeing young men cut down in the forest is chilling, especially to begin the game, let alone in a 90s JRPG. And the mastermind of this false flag, you ask? Prince Luca Blight, the so-called Mad Prince of Highland. He's orchestrating all this shit to reignite war with the neighboring city-states of Joustin. But why though? Why would he want to do this? Because Luca doesn't give a fuck. He doesn't want peace. He wants revenge for the death of his mother and the cowardice of his father, who abandoned them in their time of need. My guy wants to burn this shit to the ground. Kefka, your ass is on notice, bucko. Riou and Jowy barely escape execution, and being the sole survivors of the slaughter, are branded traitors by their own nation. That's where the story really begins, with two boys caught between nations in a world that no longer makes any goddamn sense. Separated and scarred, Riou and Jowy slowly splinter off, heading down incredibly different paths. While Riou joins a resistance group, a ragtag rebellion that eventually becomes the New Alliance army, Jowy decides that power is what he requires to see change. He murders Lady Annabelle and then infiltrates Highland from within. He begins climbing the ranks with his cunning strategy and strength, eventually marrying into the royal family to seize control from Luca himself. And here's where Suikoden 2 reveals its first central theme. War doesn't always make villains. History does. Riou and Jowy both want to stop Luca, but they disagree on exactly how. Riou believes in building a coalition, uniting the city-states against this tyranny, whereas Jowy believes in conquering them because only a single strong nation can squash future conflict. And right smack dab in the middle of their growing divide is Nanami, Ryou's sister, adopted sister, one of the game's emotional anchors. She acts as something of a referee between her adopted bro and their closest friend. She's the heart that keeps Riou grounded, and her eventual fate is a gut punch that redefines the stakes of all this shit. Along the way, Riou acquires the Bright Shield rune, while Jowy takes on the Black Sword rune, two halves of the Rune of Beginning. These aren't your typical magical MacGuffins. They symbolize the literal split between them, despite them being two parts of the same whole. Protection versus destruction, mercy versus resolve. Two young men forever linked, destined to stand on opposite sides. Pulling off a tactic you rarely see in JRPGs outside of Final Fantasy Tactics, released not that long before it. It makes your best friend your rival, not out of hatred, but out of ideology. And while all of that is simmering beneath our leading players, we still got Luca. You know what, y'all? We gotta talk. We gotta talk about Luca, because never has there been an RPG villain that does it quite like this crazy motherfucker here. So, this dude, Luca Blight, is the crown prince of the Highland Kingdom, but royalty is only part of his story. The fire that forged him came years before the events of Suikoden II began. As a child, Luca watched his mother, Sarah Blight, be ambushed, assaulted, and ultimately die by the hands of bandits hired by the city-states of Jousting. She begged for help, screamed for mercy. And Luca's own father, King Agar's Blight, he fled. That cowardice, that betrayal, shattered something inside of Luca that day. He lost more than his mother. He lost his faith in anything resembling order, diplomacy, or even decency. From that moment forward, he believed one thing: everyone deserves to burn. Remind you of anybody? Actually, Murayama stated in an interview that while Riou and Jowy are the sides of one coin, Luca and Jowy are supposed to represent two sides of the same goal, which I really picked up on while playing at this much more advanced age. We'll call it that. But bro, Luca's tactics during the Dunnan Unification War are barbaric. He doesn't stop at conquest. No. He wants to see the end of everything and everyone. When he attacks Ryubi village early on, he lines up the survivors and makes that grown woman grovel, grunting like a pig before slaughtering her. He laughs while doing it too. He's willing to end the lives of women, children, the elderly. Let me tell you, this was a massive smack in the face back in 1999 and hits me way harder today. That scene isn't just there to shock you. It's there to remind you this isn't some charismatic villain. This isn't Sephiroth or that crazy-ass clown that I mentioned above. This is hate turned into flesh, and he's not making any attempt at hiding it. He orchestrated the destruction of his own Highland Army youth unit in the game's opening act. He's not above killing his own men to get what he wants. He's not above slaughtering an entire ring of refugees out in the battlefield. He's not above taking out his own damn family. He later murders his own father in cold blood, though I guess he kind of deserved it. Cleary doesn't really give a shit about winning. He wants scorched earth, destruction, despair, destitution. Even his soldiers are terrified of him. They obey him not out of loyalty, but out of just straight up fear. He's unpredictable, brutal, and potentially insane. He earned that nickname. That shit ain't propaganda. It's just facts. But perhaps the most terrifying thing about Luca Blight, despite just being a blood and guts man, is how hard he is to stop. Luca's assassination attempt is one of the most pivotal moments in all of gaming. It is the centerpiece of Suikoden II, one of the most legendary boss fights in RPG history. This hits me so much more than just a tactical challenge or a string of combat events. It's a true blue, goddamned statement from Murayama and team. You think 6 characters are enough to take him down? 12? No, sir. You fight him with 3 full parties, 18 characters, your best, your strongest, your most loyal. Each group wears him down one phase at a time. And even then, he doesn't fall to any of their strikes. As his health fades, the scene shifts. Archers surround him, a storm of arrows rain down. Still, he stands huddled over his blade. Finally, bruised and bleeding, with his trusted sword in hand and arrows in his back, he rushes you, demanding a one-on-one duel. Now that duel between Luca and the main character is special. Shit, I just got chills thinking about it. Even with all of the life force leaking out of him after dozens of attempts on his life, he's still dangerous. A cornered wolf. Nah, this is the gorilla all of y'all social media folks was talking about for weeks. We found him, because 100 people are not enough to finish Luca Blight. My palms were sweating playing this fight. One wrong misread of his attacks, and you can still lose this fight. But as Riou lands the final blow, Luca falls to the earth. And even as he dies, there's no repentance. He stands on his business. It took hundreds to kill me, but I killed humans by the thousands. I am sublime. I am the true face of evil. The most intriguing part about Luca is that he isn't possessed. He doesn't wield some god-tier rune. He doesn't turn into some god-level being. Canonically, he just uses a basic fire rune on a standard-ass blade. He's just a man. A broken man who reformed himself into a monster. And that's why he's so terrifying. Because Luca Blight is what happens when trauma festers into an ideology, when pain pursues power, when revenge becomes your religion. He doesn't reflect our heroes as most villains do. He's a warning of what we do not want to become, both in-game and in real life. Take heed, Joey. That sort of pain can lead to two things: positive healing or lashing out. Luca is the representation of the ultimate lashing. As a kid, I never did understand just what happened to his mom. On this replay, I really internalized it like, man, his mom was brutalized, man. Brutalized. And at the same time, his father did nothing to protect her or his own son. Under those circumstances, anyone, any of us could become like Luca. And yet, Suikoden II never tries to really make you feel sorry for him. It wants you to hate him, to fear him, to earn the moment he finally lays to rest. That's why it takes your whole damn army to accomplish it. That's why it takes damn near everything that you have. In a franchise full of rich politics, heartfelt friendships, and slow burn storytelling, Luca is a roundhouse kick to the throat, a knife right under your floating rib, a sword set ablaze. Years later, RPG fans still talk about him, not just as a great villain, but as a reminder, true evil doesn't need a marching band. It just needs time, anger, and enough fire to spread. Luca Blight didn't just raise the bar for what I thought JRPG bosses could be. He took that whole shit and burned it straight to the ground. Even with Luca gone, the war doesn't end. Jowy, now king of Highland, continues to push the conflict forward, seeking the power he believes is the only path to lasting peace. And in doing so, he becomes the very thing he tried to destroy. And that's the second core theme of Suikoden II. True leadership is sacrifice. Nanami is mortally wounded, and you feel every ounce of pain from our main characters as she tries to protect them both under a hail of arrows. But her fate is left somewhat ambiguous. Eventually, Riou and Jowy's armies collide. You, as the player, have a choice: finish him or find another way. And if you've recruited all 108 stars of destiny, you can unlock the true ending. I did this playthrough, but much like Gremio in Suikoden 1, I sort of prefer the darker ending. The stakes feel higher if you get one of the bad outcomes, and it sounds like Yoshitaka actually wanted that. But regardless, the war ends, the bright shield and black sword return to slumber, and on a quiet cliffside, the two boys who started this journey get to walk away together, broken but alive. No parades, no medals, no hype. Just a couple friends who survived their conflict and made history in doing so. And that's the final truth hidden in Suikoden 2. War doesn't really have heroes, only victors. What war takes from us, we can never, ever get back. Friendship might not conquer everything, but sometimes it's the only thing worth fighting for. What I love most about the story of Suikoden 2 is how down to earth it all is. Well, mostly. While Necklord makes his return, it's a much smaller cameo relative to the overall narrative that the castle scenario was in the first game. There are definitely some anime tropes involved here. Nina is way too young for our boy Flick, for instance. And I did note as I played it that post-Luca, a decent amount of the gravity felt lost. But scenes like waiting for Jowy with Nanami and Palika, the murder of Annabelle, Nanami's last stand, and so many others hit with so much weight and heft because even when the game is oafish, goofy, or lays it on hella heavy, you feel like you know these characters. And it's the contrast between the silly and the serious that makes the tougher, more impactful moments just absolutely smash you over the dome through your screen. It's hard enough to make you care about a band of 6 to 8 characters like the average JRPG does. Try 108. Yet, they somehow pull it off so well. In replaying Suikoden 2 all these years later, so many of the best aspects of the story felt even more powerful to me. With life experience and a deeper understanding of the world around me, although some of the more juvenile parts didn't land as well as they did when I was 13. While Suikoden 2 is best remembered for its story, the gameplay deserves way more credit than it usually gets, because underneath all the heartbreak and politics is a surprisingly rich, flexible RPG system that expands on everything that the first game built. Let's start with that foundation that we're talking about. Suikoden 2 is a pretty traditional JRPG in many ways. You run around towns, equip your characters, and get into encounters of both the random and scripted variety. Fights stick with traditional turn-based combat. 6 characters per party, front and back rows, basic attacks, magic, items, and unite moves. But it's so damn fast. Battles move with a snappiness that puts most RPGs of the era to shame. You can set commands for all 6 party members and then watch them play out in one quick sequence. It keeps random encounters from dragging and gives even basic battles a sense of momentum. I also love how fast it is to catch up characters who fall behind in level, really encouraging you to mess around with your lineups. The inventory system is a lot better in 2 than in the first game, but there are still some issues. A recent patch fixed nearly all of my problems that I wrote down about it, like being able to see how equipment affects character stats from your warehouse screen, or the weird-ass autosave feature, but I thought I'd mention them anyway because I beat it before the patch hit. But where things really start to shine is in details of Suikoden 2. Each character can equip up to 3 runes, a nice upgrade from the original, granting access to spells, passive abilities, or unique skills, as well as a rune slot for your weapon. And that rune system is the core of the game's flexibility. Want a tanky front line with some healing magic? Yeah, go ahead and do it. Want your dog knight to randomly counterattack with explosive force? Hey, no judgment here. And certain character combinations unlock unite attacks, tag team moves that range from the goofy to the devastating. These can be 2 characters or your entire party. Some hit hard, some miss half the time, some are just there for the fan service, but they give you a reason to experiment with your ever-growing roster of 108 recruitable characters. Now, speaking of which, recruiting characters in Suikoden is basically half the game itself. You're not just assembling a party like most other JRPGs, you're building up an army, a resistance movement. And with every new character comes more than just combat options. Your home base actually expands, and this is so dope. The castle is back, and its growth is so much more interesting this time around. At the start, it's little more than a crumbling fortress, but over time, it transforms into a living, breathing community. Shops open, banners hang, new ramparts emerge with real value and charm. NPCs walk the halls, offering services and interesting tidbits of info. It's visual proof of your progress, and it gives your quest a sense of place that most RPGs never even attempt. Even better is that many of those recruitable characters open up mini games. Let's talk about the fan favorite, Hayo's cooking contest. At some point, you recruit the simple chef, who actually hits hard as hell in battle with those cast iron johns, but you know, we ain't talking about that right now. Dude has rivals, many rivals. The Black Dragon clan wants all your culinary secrets, and they show up ready to challenge you in full-blown Iron Chef style battles, complete with ingredient gathering, presentation, and judging from war-weary comrades. Each judge has their own food preferences, which means, yes, you can bribe Victor with steak. I mean, what bear doesn't love meat? These battles are ridiculous and amazing and hilarious. And they're not just throwaway side content. They're like full-on multi-phase quests with custom art, flavor text, and storylines. There are other mini games too. The dice game returns, you got dancing, you got quizzes, you got fishing. Even the bathhouse is back with more decor options than ever before. But cooking is where the game fully leans into the absurdist joy, building a home during wartime and becoming a great excuse to stop by your restaurant to grab a little food. That's really what makes Suikoden 2's gameplay feel so special. It's not just about mashing X to get through to the next random encounter. You're building something, watching it grow, seeing the people that you saved contribute in ways beyond just stabbing things with their swords. One interesting development wrinkle that I did always love, and one of the most unique and ambitious ideas at the time, was a save data transfer. Konami really was a fan of that stuff back then, weren't they?
Now I'll read more deeply into your soul. I can see into your mind. So, you like Suikoden?
Now, if you imported your file from the first Suikoden, characters you recruited previously, like Riou, could reappear. They even thought about what to do if you didn't have Suikoden 1 data, with a backup NPC named Ellie created just for that purpose. This was a team that was all about continuity. They were thinking across multiple games long before the terms cinematic universe and multiverse were a thing. Now, I didn't play Suikoden 1 until after Suikoden 2, so I didn't get to experience this the first time around, but it actually ended up pulling me into Suikoden 1, which if you're interested in that video, I'll have that in the link down in the description below. And just when you think you've seen all the systems, the game throws in 2 more combat modes, returning from the first game. We have large-scale tactical battles that have expanded in scope, playing out more like the classic Fire Emblem style skirmishes that you would expect from this type of gameplay. You move units across a grid, execute special attacks, and use runes for devastating AoE. They're simple by design, but the stakes are high. You can actually lose named characters forever if you get too reckless. They do feel a bit predetermined how they actually play out, but I think they're better than the first games, if nothing more than they're more complex and more layered. And the story integration makes each battle feel relatively weighty. Second, you have duels, the one-on-one cinematic showdowns that act like RPG rock, paper, scissors. You read your opponent's dialogue, determine their intent, and choose the right move, attack, defend, or special technique. It's less about numbers and more about psychology, especially in the final moments of the game. While Suikoden 2's strength is in its characters and story, it really does hit harder because the gameplay constantly reinforces it. You don't just hear about your growing army, you build it. You don't just see the cost of war, you feel it when your favorite character falls in battle, never to be seen again. You don't just go on side quests, the side content feels integrated and engaging. Feels cohesive with the overall vibe of Suikoden 2. And somehow, with all the disparate pieces, it just works. The game gives us something so very rare. A game where you're building your home up feels like the most heroic and important thing that you can do. All right, let's be honest. Even when it launched in 1999, Suikoden 2 seemed dated to the layperson. Other RPGs were flexing full motion video, jaw-dropping 3D models for the time. Squaresoft had just landed multiple blows with cinematic cutscenes and digitally rendered brooding. Suikoden 2 went the gritty route and stuck to pixel art, sprites, hand-painted backdrops, static camera, and absolutely zero voice acting. And yet, I'd argue it's aged better than most of the games that buried it in its heyday. Because Suikoden 2 drew from a place that still speaks to all of us. This game is full of tiny moments that are louder than any single cutscene. Like the infamous Nanami reveal early on, where she barrels in and full-on tackles Riou, shakes him around, and gives him a huge hug. She doesn't just tell you that she missed you, the animation shows it. It's fast, goofy, warm, and completely unforgettable. According to Murayama-san, this was pretty common as the game's development continued. Every time I saw that scene, it seemed like the number of animation patterns had increased. Ryou's imprint on the wall when she throws you against it, that wasn't there in the beginning. It got added in somewhere along the line. I was reminded of the numerous unique animations for one-off scenarios throughout as I replayed this game, which really sets it apart. The characterization is second to none. It shows a passion for craft that few games could ever hope to rival. And bro, for a 2D game on PlayStation, Suikoden 2 pulls off some surprisingly advanced visual tricks. The in-combat sprites got a massive upgrade from the first game, with actual idle animations now, as well as low on life animation to go along with that. There's a real-time lighting system running under the hood that is actually quite robust. It's so good at helping to set the scene. In caves and dungeons, torch lights flicker across the walls. Even in towns, when there are day-night transitions, it shifts the entire palette, changing shadows and mood. Gotta love that sunset scene or fighting Luca under the blackness of night. All this gives weight to the places. And when combined with the game's painterly environments, it creates a visual tone that's both storybook and uniquely reflective. When the Suikoden 1 and 2 HD remasters launched in 2025, it walked a fine line, updating the look without rewiring the soul. And I believe Konami actually pulled it off. I was a little skeptical at first, like many, but I fucks with it. Character portraits were redrawn in HD by the original artists, preserving the essence of each character, but with sharper lines, richer shading, and more vibrant colors. The backgrounds were what were reworked the most, entirely built back up in high resolution with subtle movement added. Flags wave, rivers ripple. Comparing it side by side just reminds me how far the graphics have actually come. Battle effects are cleaner, with rune animations getting soft visual upgrades. Still really simple, but smoother and crisper. A lot of attention was given to the battle with Luca, and I love that. I really did notice the upgrades in that fight. Best of all, the original sprite work was not redrawn, just preserved and cleaned up, like a refurbished piece of fine art that you took to LeBron. I noticed that I really like how the new art blends with Suikoden 2 versus how it blended with the original. I felt like the thick outlines of Suikoden 1's characters really clashed with those modern redrawn backgrounds, but the magic of Suikoden was always there, and now it shines like a blinking rune bright in the sky. Suikoden 2's soundtrack is very effective, but I'd be lying if I didn't say it hit me a little bit less than I expected. Once again, we got Miki Higashino returning to compose the score, just as she did for the first game. This would actually be her final game for Konami. She was known for combining folk and classical influences into warm, expressive MIDI compositions. And this time, she expanded that palette across a much larger world. As good as the Suikoden 2 soundtrack is, and it is good, don't get me wrong, I still think the original has a bit of an edge. Suikoden 1's music felt more intimate to me, like the world was really lived in, and that made every tragedy hit just a bit harder. It didn't have the same scope, and was of course a much shorter game to boot. With Suikoden 2, they aimed higher, more regions, more ideologies, more people, and Higashino's music followed suit, crafting a mosaic of regional styles that gave the game's political and cultural map a true sonic identity. I love that you can hear the areas of the game in the musical styles. The Highland Kingdom themes are largely militaristic, dark, filled with brass, pounding percussions, marching drums, matching the looming brutality of Luca Blight. Muse, the capital, is regal and restrained, with a sort of Celtic vibe, replete with triplet hand drums and flutes. South Window feels laid back and Eastern, with casual melodic loops, rousing claps, and a blend of instruments that hint at its status as a trade hub. Two River introduces a really odd time signature, staccato drums, quirky instrumentation, perfectly matching its tense, half-comedic political standoff. And the castle theme, A Bustling Town, will live in my head forever. It isn't my favorite track of all time, but goddamn, do the memories flood in when I hear it. There are a few undeniable standouts on the soundtrack, and I'd like to point them out. Reminiscence is one of the most emotionally resonant tracks in all of RPGs. A slow, melancholic piano melody that builds and falls. It lingers. It's grief in musical form. It's definitely a hard one to beat, and it hit me right in the feels each and every time. Now, a fun fact about this song, person singing on it, as well as the opening FMV song, was just an employee at Konami. The multi-talented folk singer designer Yumiko Takahashi lent her voice to this all-time classic. You know, in her downtime. The chase plays during the Luca fight and is magnificent. The way the string sections build up, the punchy percussion, brooding bass lines. If your blood doesn't start pumping just from hearing this start up, you've been living wrong. Moonlit Night theme is perfectly reflective, a down-tempo reminder of what you are fighting for. It plays during some of the game's most important moments of thought and reflection. There's no crazy pomp in this soundtrack, no overriding, lots of very intentional composition and emotional restraint. Outside of the music, Suikoden II's sound design has always been understated, but super solid. Runes have distinct chimes. Weapon hits sound weighty. In the 2025 remaster, Konami made some smart additions, my opinion, most notably that ambient sound. Now forests rustle, towns buzz with birds and wind. They really didn't rework the music, but this added layer of sound makes the world feel richer to me. So no, this isn't the greatest OST of all time. Even as someone who owns it on vinyl, I find myself spinning the Suikoden 1 score more often. But Suikoden 2's soundtrack isn't built to be some sort of greatest hits album. It's built to accompany you on this journey. And to that end, kind of kills it. Its goal is to retreat into the background when the scene needs a reserved take, return when you least expect it. It's tasteful and intelligent, and I appreciate that. That's why, despite it not being the most overwhelming collection of tracks ever, I still love it so damn much. Now, I'll be honest, I was nervous to replay Suikoden 2. It's been my all-time favorite game for decades now. And in the years since, notoriety and accolades have built up in a way that I can't say I ever really expected. I was worried that I'd simply be chasing a memory of my most beloved game from a time long past. And when something means that much, the thought of going back, seeing the seams, the awkward bits, the parts that maybe didn't age so well, it's a little scary. But what I found wasn't a game just frozen in time. Suikoden 2 grew up with me too. The story still hits. Harder, even. I understand the weight of Joey's choices now, the pained silence behind Nanami's smiles, the cost of Luca Blight's fire, and the price we paid to stop him. The gameplay is still sound, still fast, still deep, still fun. It may be deadly easy, a design choice, according to Murayama, by the way. It may lose some of its emotional weight as the game closes. The music didn't blow me away like it once did back in the day, but it still was an incredible ride to revisit. And the remaster, for all of its minor flaws, finally gave this game the platform it always deserved at a fraction of that high cost. So now, after all this time, is Suikoden 2 still my favorite game ever made? Yeah, definitely. Because it's not just about what it did then. It's about what it still does for me now. It challenges power. It respects grief. And it never forgets the people who walk beside you and those who made that ultimate sacrifice. You don't have to save the world. Just bring people together and they'll do the saving. Suikoden 2 is peerless. It's a timeless classic that continues to amaze and enchant. And for that, I'm forever thankful to that 13-year-old me who took the chance on this Konami gem. I wouldn't be who I am today without it. If you enjoyed this one, check out this review on just how much better Suikoden 1 is than I even remember. Drop a comment below and tell me, do you have a game from your past that you're a little afraid to revisit? And if you're new here, subscribe. Tell a friend that The Gamersician is the channel for thoughtful gaming content, and I'll catch y'all on the flip. Peace!